One night, I was driving alone to see my parents. They lived in a distant place along with my brother. I was so excited to see them after 2 weeks and couldn't wait to spend a few days with them. I couldn't be nearer to them because of my job, and I really regretted that. So I used to visit them whenever I could. I usually take the shortest route, but due to some construction work, I was forced to deviate and take a longer and unknown route to my destination. I've never taken that route before as it was much longer, but I wasn't going to wait until my usual route opened again. The drive, which was normally 4 hours, was now extended to 6. But I was fully prepared with a full tank of gas and all the necessary checkups for my car before I started the journey, as I always do. The night was thick with darkness as I navigated my way down a desolate highway, the dense woods on either side closing in like silent sentinels. My only companions were the dim glow of the dashboard and the rhythmic hum of the tires on the asphalt. The journey seemed endless, and fatigue settled in my bones. Out of nowhere, the car sputtered and shuddered to a reluctant stop. I couldn't believe it. I've thought about this possibility when I realized that I will be traveling through a stranded path. But I consoled myself with a sense of pride, knowing that I'd taken all preventive measures. Now look at what had happened. It was as if the universe was playing a trick on me. Panic seized me as I tried to restart the engine, the key turning desperately in the ignition. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the distant howl of a lonely wind. Checking my phone for help, I was met with the cold reality of no signal. Miles away from civilization, I felt the weight of isolation settle on my shoulders. I stepped out of the car, hoping to see a sign of life in the oppressive darkness. But there was nothing. It was dense woods on my left and vast fields on my right. I could barely see some twinkling lights on the other side of the field. They could be houses, but judging by its size, it must be at least 5 or 6 miles away. Other than that, there didn't seem to be any chance of getting help from anywhere. My instinct didn't allow me to leave the safety of the car and look for help on foot. The air was still, and an uneasy quiet hung over the desolate highway. As I stood there, a cold shiver ran down my spine, and a sense of foreboding gripped my heart. Whispers, faint and indistinct, echoed through the trees, reaching my ears like ghostly murmurs. Distant footsteps, soft but deliberate, added an eerie rhythm to the night. I strained my eyes, peering into the blackness that surrounded me. Shadows seemed to dance at the edge of my vision, elusive and menacing. Every rustle of leaves, every creak of a branch, set my nerves on edge. My breath caught in my throat as the dim moonlight revealed a figure standing by the roadside. A silhouette, obscured by the darkness, moved closer with deliberate steps. My pulse quickened and I squinted, trying to make out the features of the approaching figure. The feeling of being watched intensified, and an unsettling energy hung in the air. Panic set in as the figure slowly walked towards me, its face hidden in the shadows. A trembling voice within urged me to retreat to the safety of my car, but curiosity held me in place. I had a small hope that the person saw me in trouble and was approaching for help. The faint light played tricks with the shadows, making it impossible to discern any defining features of the approaching stranger. I called out, my voice shaky, asking if they could help. No response. The figure continued its advance, now close enough for me to see the outline of its form. A tattered coat billowed around him, and the silhouette seemed to lack a distinct face, obscured by an impenetrable darkness. The air grew colder, and an oppressive stillness settled upon the desolate highway. Panic tightened its grip on my chest as I fumbled for the car keys, ready to retreat to the safety of the locked vehicle. But before I could make my escape, the moonlight revealed the figure's face for a brief moment. Hollow eyes stared into mine, devoid of emotion, and a ghastly smile twisted its featureless face. The shock paralyzed me for a moment, and then instinct kicked in. I sprinted towards the car, fumbling to unlock the door. The whispers around me grew louder, now resembling laughter, echoing through the night like a sinister chorus. The car door slammed shut behind me, and I locked it, the thin layer of metal offering a frail barrier against the unknown. As I peered through the window, the figure was standing still, its haunting gaze fixed upon me. The woods seemed to close in, darkness pressing against the car windows. The figure raised its hand, pointing towards the woods. A chill ran down my spine as I followed its gaze. In the shadows, more figures emerged, indistinct shapes, each with their gaze fixed upon me. The whispers crescendoed into an eerie symphony, and the shadows began to converge. Terrified, I turned the key in the ignition, praying for the engine to roar back to life. The car remained stubbornly silent. Desperation clawed at me as the figures closed in, their unearthly presence palpable even through the confines of the car. My mind raced, considering the unimaginable fate that awaited me in the heart of this desolate highway. In a last-ditch effort, I tried the engine again, and this time the car responded with a hesitant rumble. The headlights flickered to life, cutting through the oppressive darkness. Without wasting any time, I slammed my foot on the gas pedal, the tires screeching as the car surged forward. As I passed, I glanced at the figure and its companions for one last time. They were still staring at me, their heads moving according to the direction of my car, at the same time in a uniform manner. Even though I glanced only for a brief moment, that sight made me press the accelerator with my whole body weight. The haunting figures vanished into the rearview mirror, swallowed by the abyss of the desolate highway. The whispers and footsteps faded into the distance, leaving me alone in the silence of the night. As I drove away from that eerie stretch of road, I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows lingered, watching from the depths of the woods. I haven't been near that route ever since. The whole family used to get together during the holidays in one place. That was a custom which was in my family for years. That year we chose my aunt's place. It was about a 4-hour drive from the town where I worked. My shift ended at 7 in the evening. Since everyone had gotten there and my cousins started calling and texting me, I wasted no time. Went to my apartment, packed some stuff, and started driving. The night was dark and moonless as I found myself alone on a desolate stretch of road. Even though I have been to my aunt's place many times, I've never driven there at night. After driving for about 2 hours, the engine of my weary car comes to a halt. Panic gripped me as I glanced at the fuel gauge. I still had enough fuel left. I didn't understand what was going on. I came to the chilling realization that I was stranded in the middle of nowhere with no sign of life in sight. I called roadside assistance, and they told me it would take them at least an hour to get to my location. I didn't want to disturb my family since they must have started the holiday celebrations by now. Also, it would take them longer to come and pick me up, so I decided to wait for the tow truck. I saw a faint flickering of neon lights. It was an old, decrepit gas station about 200 meters away, which stood like a forgotten relic in the eerie stillness. With a bit of hesitation, I decided to get into the dimly lit station to see if I could get any help. I wanted to have one last crack at getting to my aunt's place as early as possible. For a brief moment, my fear of missing out on holiday celebrations overcame the fear of entering that unknown gas station. The flickering sign overhead emitted an unsettling glow, casting long, distorted shadows across the cracked pavement. I hesitated for a moment, glancing around the desolation, before mustering the courage to step out into the unsettling silence. As I approached the station, the air hung heavy with an unnatural stillness, almost as if time itself had frozen in this desolate corner of the world. The creaking of the station's sign echoed through the emptiness, a haunting symphony of abandonment. I shivered, both from the chill in the air and the unsettling aura that enveloped the place. Inside the gas station, the flickering fluorescent lights revealed a scene frozen in time. Dust-covered shelves held forgotten relics of a bygone era, and the air carried the musty scent of neglect. I called out, my voice swallowed by the emptiness, but received no response. Driven by desperation, I ventured further into the station, hoping to find someone who could offer some assistance. The dim light cast long shadows that danced across the worn linoleum floor. My eyes widened as I moved ahead further. The walls adorned with old photographs and newspaper clippings. Each image depicted gruesome accidents that had occurred at the very spot where my car had broken down. The stories echoed through the empty halls, telling tales of tragedy and despair. The photographs captured moments frozen in time. Twisted metal, shattered glass, and the remnants of lives forever altered. Newspaper headlines screamed of lost souls and the unforgiving nature of the desolate highway. I started getting a serial killer vibe, but to calm my heart, which has now started beating a bit more faster, I consoled myself by thinking It must be someone with a lot of free time who wanted to have a record of the accidents in the area. Also, the place doesn't exactly look like one with a lot of customers. It was then that I heard it. The subtle creaking of floorboards beneath my feet and distant whispers that seemed to emerge from the walls themselves. Fear gripped me as I turned around, only to find the room empty. The photographs, however, seemed to have taken on a life of their own, their images flickering and distorting before my eyes. The air buzzed with an otherworldly energy, and I felt the gaze of unseen eyes upon me. A voice, barely a whisper, reached my ears, recounting the tales of those who had met their demise on this forsaken road. I stumbled backward, my heart racing, as the room seemed to close in on me. The door swung shut with a haunting creak, trapping me in the suffocating stillness. I let out a cry. The air became charged with an unspoken anger, and the photographs on the walls seemed to pulse with a spectral energy. Shadows danced, taking on forms that mimicked the agony captured in the frozen moments of time. By now I hoped my initial fear that there was a serial killer here was right. Suddenly, the flickering light overhead intensified, casting distorted shadows that twisted and contorted on the walls. The whispers grew louder, now a cacophony of voices from the past. I felt a cold breeze, as if someone was breathing down my neck, the presence undeniable. Driven by an instinctual fear, I made a desperate dash for the door, flinging it open and stumbling back outside. The air outside felt less oppressive, but the haunting presence lingered. The flickering sign overhead seemed to mock me, casting a surreal glow on the abandoned pumps and cracked pavement. With my heart in my mouth, I sprinted back to my car, praying that its dormant engine would come to life. I got into the car, locked all the doors, and tried my luck with the engine again. But still no response. I quickly called roadside assistance without thinking. They told me they were still half an hour away. I made sure I locked all the doors and stayed put inside the car. I could still feel a haunting energy, but it was less intensive than inside the gas station. Occasional surges of fear overtook me from time to time. I kept on looking at the gas station to see if there were any signs of danger. After what felt like an eternity, the roadside assistance guys arrived with a tow truck. As I left the place with their help, I glanced at the gas station one last time. There, inside the gas station, a figure, wearing full black, its face not visible. It is slowly waving at me. I let out a yell in fear. Heart pounding, I closed my eyes and never looked back. But the presence of other people gave me a bit more courage. Even though they were towing my vehicle, I could easily call out to them if need be. Now, you can imagine how much I would have enjoyed the holidays after that. Of course, no one at my aunt's house believed me. They dismissed it as my imagination or tricks of darkness. But I knew what I saw, and I still have nightmares. I am Alex. Just your average guy driving home after a long day at work. It's a 45-minute drive from my office to home. It's late and I'm tired, but I've got that familiar feeling of relief knowing I'll soon be home safe and sound. But then, out of nowhere, it happens. My car starts to sputter, and before I know it, it's come to a complete stop on a deserted road, surrounded by nothing but darkness. I curse under my breath, checking my phone to call for help. That's when I realize my phone's battery is dead. I've seen that the battery was low when I was at work, but had forgot to charge it since it was a very hectic day at the office. I was exactly in the lonely stretch of road, which spanned about 10 miles between my home and office. Even though I pass through that road every day, it was the first time I was driving through that road this late. I knew that it is a less traveled road, especially at night. But not even in my wildest imagination that I thought my car would break down exactly today, when I am driving this late. I tried to assess the situation. I'm in the middle of nowhere with no one to call for help. My heart starts to race as I realize the gravity of the situation. I'm stranded alone with no idea of what to do next. I try to remain calm, taking deep breaths as I pop the hood of the car, hoping to find something obvious causing the problem. But everything looks fine, and I'm no expert when it comes to cars. Panic starts to set in as I realize I'm completely out of my depth. The darkness seems to close in around me as I sit in the driver's seat, the only sound the soft patter of rain against the windshield. I feel vulnerable, exposed, as if I'm being watched by unseen eyes in the shadows. My mind starts to play tricks on me, conjuring up all sorts of terrifying scenarios. I try to shake off the feeling of dread, reminding myself that I just need to stay calm and think logically. But as the minutes tick by and no help arrives, my resolve starts to waver. I'm cold, hungry, and exhausted, and the thought of spending the night alone on this desolate road fills me with a sense of dread unlike anything I've ever felt before. Just when I'm about to lose all hope, I see headlights in the distance. Relief floods through me as I realize that help has finally arrived. But as the car gets closer, I can see that it's not a friendly passerby. It's a beat-up old sedan, its headlights flickering ominously in the darkness. I hesitate, unsure of whether to approach the car or hide in mine. But before I can make a decision, the sedan screeches to a halt beside me, and the driver's side door swings open. A figure steps out, silhouetted against the faint glow of the car's interior lights. I can't make out much about the person, just that they're tall and wearing a dark hooded coat that hides their face. My instincts scream at me to run, to get as far away from this stranger as possible. But desperation outweighs fear, and I find myself stepping out of my car, cautiously approaching the stranger. "Hey, are you okay?" I call out, my voice trembling slightly. The figure doesn't respond, just stands there silently, staring at me with an intensity that sends a shiver down my spine. I need help," I stammer, feeling more vulnerable than ever. "My car broke down, and I don't know what to do." Still no response from the stranger, just that eerie silence that seems to hang in the air like a thick fog. I'm about to turn and run when the figure finally speaks, their voice low and gravelly. "I can help you," he said, and despite the relief flooding through me, I can't shake the feeling that something is off about this person. Without waiting for my response, the stranger gestures for me to follow him back to his car. I hesitate for a moment, my instincts screaming at me to run, but desperation wins out once again, and I find myself obediently trailing after the mysterious stranger. As we approach the sedan, I can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. The car looks like it's seen better days, and there's a strange smell emanating from it. Something metallic and bitter that makes my stomach churn. But before I can voice my concerns, the stranger pops open the trunk of the car, revealing a toolbox and a spare gas can. Relief floods through me as I realize that maybe this person really can help me get back on the road. "Thank you," I say, my voice shaky with gratitude as I reach for the gas can. As I followed the stranger back to my broken-down car, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled in the pit of my stomach. His demeanor was calm, almost too calm, and there was something about the way he moved that set off alarm bells in my mind. I watched as he started working on my car, his movements precise and deliberate. There was a glint in his eyes that made my skin crawl, a predatory gleam that spoke of danger lurking beneath the surface. After some time, the stranger finally broke the silence, his tone grave as he addressed the issue with my car. "I cannot fix it," he said, his voice very calm and without any concern. I was a bit frustrated. "Thank you," I replied, grateful for his attempt. "I appreciate your help." He nodded, a solemn expression on his face. "Get in my car. I'll drop you," he said in a commanding tone. A sense of unease crept over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I was not going to get on a car with him at night, and I didn't want him to see where I lived. "Actually," I began hesitantly, "could you just call roadside assistance for me instead?" But to my surprise, the stranger's demeanor shifted. His expression hardened, and he shook his head adamantly. "We don't have time for this," he snapped, his voice sharp and commanding. I recoiled at his sudden outburst, taken aback by his change in attitude. "But I really need help," I protested, desperation creeping into my voice. He glared at me for a moment, his eyes flashing with frustration. Then, without another word, he turned on his heel and stormed back to his car. I watched in disbelief as he climbed behind the wheel and revved the engine, his actions swift and purposeful. And then, with a screech of tires, he peeled away into the night, leaving me standing alone on the deserted road. Confusion swirled in my mind as I tried to make sense of what had just happened. Why had the stranger denied my request for help? And why had he reacted so angrily when I asked him to call roadside assistance? The more I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt. There was something about the stranger, something that sent a chill down my spine. After about 30 minutes of waiting, another car approached. The driver seemed to be a normal and friendly guy. Things were pretty normal after that. He called roadside assistance for me, and I eventually got home. As I recounted the events of that unsettling night to a friend over coffee the next day, his brows furrowed in concern. Why would he refuse to call roadside assistance? My friend pondered aloud. I shook my head, the memory still fresh in my mind. I wish I knew, I admitted. My friend leaned forward, curiosity evident in his expression. And then he just drove off? Yeah, I replied, my voice tinged with frustration. He shouted at me and sped away without another word. My friend's expression darkened. That's strange, he mused. Do you think he had something to do with your car breaking down in the first place? The thought sent a chill down my spine. I don't know, I admitted, but there was something about him, something off. We sat in silence for a moment, both lost in our own thoughts. The memory of that night hung heavy in the air, a lingering reminder of the fear and uncertainty I had felt. As I glanced out the window at the bustling city street beyond, I couldn't help but wonder what might have happened if I had accepted the stranger's offer for a ride.